Audrey Thompson was just one of thousands of women who answered the call to serve the home front during World War II. Serving in the Women's Land Army, at first glance, her story is like that of so many others. Established in 1917, the Women's Land Army was dissolved after the First World War. With the nation on its knees and most men in service during the Second World War, over 200,000 untrained women stepped in to replace male farm workers. To sign up, women had to be at least 17 years old, unmarried with no children, and considered physically fit. Rising to the challenge, the land girls operated tractors, cultivated crops to keep the nation fed, and surpassed gender stereotypes at every turn. But the extra details on Audrey's service card give away just a few more secrets. Audrey was 17 when she signed up in 1942, living at the time at the lodge in Norland, Yorkshire. She took this step before civil service became compulsory for women, giving us a hint of Audrey's personality and her willingness to serve her country. She entered service as soon as she possibly could. We know she served in West Yorks and then transferred to Suffolk. We know she married during her tenure. Let's start our exploration of her life by creating a place to record what we learn. We can do that easily on the Find My Past family tree. Because we already have so many details for Audrey's life simply from her Land Army card, we want to keep this as simple as we can. Let's start by merging the facts from her military record directly into her family tree. From the transcription page, simply click on Add to Tree. Select the person in your tree the record talks about, in this case, Audrey, and then click on Continue. You can choose to include all of the facts from the record or just some of them. When you're happy with the facts chosen, click on Accept. All of the information from Audrey's Land Army card has now been added to her profile on the family tree. It's really that easy. Now that everything is together and in one place, what do we do to move forward? Well, we don't yet know any other member of Audrey's family, but we do know that she married. So let's start with that event and identify her new husband. We can utilize the England and Wales Marriages 1837 to 2005 collection to find him. We know she became Mrs. Fisher in 1945. So start by searching for Audrey Thompson using her maiden name, who marries someone with Fisher as his surname in that same year. We find a match straight away. Audrey marries Frank R. Fisher in Yorkshire. And just like that, one simple step, and we have the name of her husband. We can now add him to our family tree the exact same way we did with her military information. There, now we have our married couple listed. You can see there are hints popping up already. But for now, let's stick with the facts we have from her Land Army card. You can go back and delve deeper into those hints at any time. It's very common for births, marriages, and deaths to be listed in local newspapers. And newspapers are bursting with detail, bringing our ancestors' stories to life with vivid insight and remarkable depth. So we definitely want to see what they can offer about Audrey and Frank. And the marriage is listed. It's one of the first things that we find. The Halifax Evening Courier includes this small snippet, but we can learn even more of their story. Frank is named as the son of D. Fisher of Woolpit, and Audrey, the adopted daughter of Mr. and Mrs. W. Riley of the Lodge in Norland, the exact location that she has on her Land Army card. Newspapers actually tell us a lot about Audrey. Let's take a closer look at these. Historical newspapers give us so much depth to a story, and there is also a lot of material available to us, really at our fingertips. We'll need to give the search tool just enough information to find the right Audrey Thompson in all of this wonderful newspaper content. If we simply search on her name, add in the phrase Land Army, and then narrow the time frame down to the Second World War by limiting to the decade of the 1940s, we actually find her straight away. In fact, we find her several times. Let's look at this first result from the Halifax Evening Courier, dated 20th September 1945. The headline screams across the page, "Champion Rat Catcher," and a photo. What an incredible find. And if you take a moment to review the other articles from our search, even pause this video to do so, You'll find more details about Audrey, such as confirming the Rileys as her adopted parents and her abilities as a rat catcher, along with her Land Army partner, Phoebe Ellis. These two women were nationally known for their war efforts on the home front. Referred to as modern Pied Pipers, we don't just get the basic details. We can also learn exactly how the members of the Land Army went through this process and why it was so vital. It's one thing to learn that Audrey herself was so successful, but it's also important to learn the how, when, where, and why of that success, really understanding the day to day experience for the land girls. Not to mention the sense of pride they must have had in this work, Audrey and her peers. What a moment it must have been to be featured nationally as a war hero for something considered so outside of a typical woman's behavior, to get such a sense of fulfillment from this vital but really barely talked about job. And of course, we easily see that the Land Army was just one of the women's national services during the war, which also included the Auxiliary Territorial Force, the Women's Royal Naval Service, the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, the London Ambulance Service, and so much more. So now we have all of these newspaper clippings. What do we do with them? Let's save them to Audrey's family tree as well. When you're looking at a newspaper article, you can use the built-in clipping tool for several functions, and I actually recommend that you utilize them all. You can select your area just like this, and once that's settled, you're happy with the cropping, you can save this to your tree, download the article, share it on social media, or save it to a collection. In our case, for today, we want to add it to her tree, so we have a visual timeline of her life. Simply click here and it's done, just like that. You can see that you still have more options, such as adding to a collection. Collections allow you to save and organize your favorite Find My Past newspaper clippings. You can create collections about any topic and add clippings to one or multiple collections, and it's an excellent tool. I highly recommend doing this to complement your own storytelling. For now, we're going to go back to the tree where we can easily see all the articles on Audrey's profile. Everything we have found so far is right here, not just as a simple sentence or fact, but the full newspaper clipping as we captured it, really allowing for Audrey's life and her experiences to be showcased. It really pops out of the screen. Let's take one more step to learn about Audrey and her war experience, starting at the very beginning of this conflict. Let's take a look at both Audrey and Frank as young single adults in the 1939 register. As the only snapshot of the civilian population for the time period, the 1939 register allows us to see Audrey and Frank on the eve of the biggest and deadliest war in human history. We can discover what their family life was like, their occupation, and the neighbors they would shelter alongside. What must they have been feeling during this life-altering period of their lives? As the government called for recruits both for military and civil roles, and the fear of a World War I style gas attack on British shores started to feel very real, families all over the country scrambled to acquire garden bomb shelters, relocating their children out of the cities, and many pre-planned for food rationing and limited resources. 1939 was a year of change and fear. How would this imminent war shape the trajectory of their lives over the next 6 years? It didn't take long for Audrey and her family to feel the impact. Nearby Halifax was bombed in 1940, killing 11 people in Hanson Lane. This isn't that far from where Audrey was living, and she would have just been 16 years old at the time. Did either Audrey or Frank ever think they would find a spouse during this intense conflict? Let's start with Frank. We can estimate that he was born around the same time as Audrey, and we know he is the son of Mrs. D. Fisher of Woolpit in Suffolk. So we know approximately who we are looking for. With just his name and the location of Woolpit, we actually get 4 results. The first one is in the village and the others are nearby, still worth considering. There are 2 that have a similar birth year of Audrey in 1924, the first one and the last one. We'll go with the first result for Frank Roland Fisher because it matches most of our known facts about him, especially the location. We find Frank living with his mother, the widowed Daisy Fisher, or D. Fisher, on Borley Green in Woolpit. His birth date is listed as 11th of February 1923, and he works as an agricultural laborer. This appears to be our Frank. So let's do this again in the 1939 register, but this time for Audrey. We know her name is Audrey Thompson, living in Norland, York, and we know she was born in 1924. The search process gives us just 5 results. And that first one looks promising, with both Thompson and Fisher listed as her surnames. But why does it also say Waters? Let's take a look at the historical record to see what's happening. We do find her living with her adopted parents, the Rileys. So we can see right away this is the correct entry. And the 1939 register was actually used as a living document for many years. So all of her marriages and name changes are recorded. This is just the start of Audrey's story, but it has allowed us to see how a simple military record, her service card from the Women's Land Army, can lead to so much more. And the 1939 register hints at that. She was actually married twice, and that's why she has the surname Waters in the register. Not to mention all those newspaper articles that talk about her adoption, repeated over and over again. Well, we don't have time today to delve into her entire story. It is enticing to see more information about her. These are the tidbits all of us are hoping for in family history, giving us clues to continue our efforts as we look through these historical records. Perhaps you can take a turn in finding more of Audrey's story. We'd love to hear what you find out. We started this by saying that Audrey Thompson was one of thousands of women who answered the call to serve the home front during World War II. And she was. Not only that, but she excelled in her work, even making headlines for her remarkable commitment to duty. All the while, she balanced life as both a dedicated rat catcher in the Women's Land Army and a wartime newlywed. Audrey's story is a powerful reminder of the extraordinary women who shaped history. Perhaps it's time to uncover the wartime heroines in your own family's past. These are the stories that made the UK what it is today. This is an exploration of a life, family history understood.